All right. I would say that's, we've got this part of it down.
Okay, ya pudimos hacer esta parte. Siempre. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. I'm on the wrong channel.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much for that, Andrea. And welcome to our 7th session in our exciting Helping Good Businesses Be Better Lunch and Learn series. We are here in Sterling, Colorado at the amazing Annex. And our topic today is recruiting and retaining talent from underrepresented populations. Our panel today is split. So we have some folks that are going to be via Zoom, and then we have our guests in person as well. Without further ado, I want to introduce our Executive Director, Deborah. Deborah, take it away.
Hi, I'm Deborah. I'm the Executive Director of Good Business Colorado. We're a grassroots organization of values-driven business owners working to build a more prosperous, equitable, and sustainable Colorado. So this program, being the Helping Good Businesses Be Better programming series, is really designed to meet business owners where they're at and really provide practical, actionable advice for businesses that wear every hat under the sun and have to do everything themselves. So we asked our members and our partner organizations, what are the issues, what are the topics that are most important to you that would be most helpful? And we put together this series. I'd like to thank our sponsoring organizations with whom we literally would not be here today. Our series presenting sponsor is Bank of America. And today's event sponsor is Arc Thrift Stores. We're very grateful to have Lloyd, CEO of Arc Thrift Stores, joining us virtually as a panelist today. So we are also doing this series in partnership with over 30 organizations. We are here at the Annex, and Trey, this has really been a labor of love facility for him, and it's so incredibly meaningful to do this event in this facility, a former jail that is being transitioned to a hub of the community, a networking space, and a place where entrepreneurs can create and thrive. And so in addition to being an incredible partner to Good Business Colorado on this event and the series, thank you so much for letting us do this event here today. It's very meaningful, as you'll all soon understand why. In addition to Logan County Economic Development Corporation, we have over 30 partners on this series. I'm going to do the speed reading list. It's really important to call out these names because for the entrepreneurs in the room and joining us today online, all these organizations live to serve businesses day in and day out. Their goal are how can we make our businesses thrive? So we are incredibly grateful to be partnering with the African Chamber of Commerce, the Asian Chamber of Commerce, Be Civic, Be Local Colorado, the B-Side Fund, the Buena Vista Chamber of Commerce, SEDS Finance, Colfax Business Improvement District, the Colorado Black Chamber of Commerce, the Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce, Community Shares of Colorado, Denver Economic Development and Opportunity, Downtown Colorado Inc., the Downtown Development Authority of Fort Collins, Downtown Grand Junction, Entrepreneurship for All, Energize Colorado, Good Business Colorado, Great Pueblo, the Greater Pueblo Chamber, Local First, the Logan County Economic Development Corporation, Metro Deep, the North Metro Denver, SBDC, Partnership for Community Action, the Pueblo Latino Chamber of Commerce, the Regenerative Coalition, Recovery Coalition, Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute, the Salida Chamber of Commerce, Small Business Majority Social Venture Partners, Startup Colorado, the Sustainable Living Association, the American Sustainable Business Network, the Latino Chamber of Boulder County, the Commons, and World Trade Center Denver. Again, these organizations work day in and day out to support local business owners, so utilize their services. Additionally, we recognize that we're gathered today in Colorado, the land of the Ute, the Arapaho, and the Cheyenne, and many other indigenous tribes who still live and travel here. We're committed to framing our work in the context of anti-oppression to the best of our ability. And last, before I kick it back to Jason, I do have one favor to ask. When we conclude this event, please take the survey. It'll only take you a couple minutes, and we really, really appreciate your feedback. We really drive this programming based on that feedback we receive. So without further ado, Jason.
Awesome. And thanks again for everyone who makes these events possible. It's been amazing traveling across Colorado. I'm Jason, again with GBC, but also your moderator for today. I'm a Colorado native, small business owner myself, but we're going to go ahead and get started with our amazing panelists. So we're going to kick it off with Bran Campbell, the president and CEO of the Asian Chamber of Commerce, Colorado. Bran, when you are ready, go ahead and take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. So I'm here to talk about hiring and interviewing and retaining the new immigrant and next generation and refugee employee. As we all know, as we should know, that they are very eager to do a good job, just as everyone else is. And unfortunately, though, there shouldn't be any kind of discrimination to interviewing or hiring these individuals. However, here at the Asian Chamber, we have had reports that there has been discrimination and just being overlooked. So I just wanted to go over a few cultural considerations to make the process of interviewing and hiring a positive process that benefits both the employer and employee. So there are a few general points to keep in mind when interviewing a new immigrant, next generation, or refugee. And this is for in-person or virtually, and hiring or even evaluating them while they're on the job. For a lot of the Asian, Pacific American, and refugee community, body language is, of course, very important. We have to realize that in many cultures, not just Asia, but looking directly at another is, looking directly at somebody else is considered very rude. So that individual may cast their eyes downward or aside as a sign of respect, and vice versa. You looking directly at them may also be construed as rude on your part. So additionally, an open-armed, relaxed seating posture, just kind of like this, like a lot of us do, that may also be considered rude. Applicants usually sit straight upright. Their arms are kind of closed and their hands may be clasped as a sign of respect. And again, switch that around. When you are interviewing them, your body posture is also presented in a way that's either opening or rude. A new immigrant, next generation, or refugee applicant may be reluctant to disclose their previous employment, their experience, their education, or even their accomplishments, because this is culturally boorish, okay? That kind of bragging, it's seen as bragging, and again, seen as rude. One thing that I really try to stress to not only employers, but also to nonprofit organizations who have opportunities available to the community is that they have to let go of their expectation of proper grammar, because written and verbal skills may not be the perfect English that we all expect. And we shouldn't judge them, the applicant, as being incompetent. These applicants usually speak 2 or more languages, which is already 3 more than I do. And then we also have to realize that their cognitive style may lean towards a group think rather than individual achievement. So depending on what kind of skills you are requiring, it would be good to remember that they do work better in a group. However, this is interesting. In my community, they may work better in a group, but they may remain socially apart from the group. So if everybody wanted to go to lunch together or after work, go and have a drink, you may need to actually invite them personally to have them join. They're not being aloof, they just are waiting for the invitation. I think it would benefit employers to know that there are a lot of cultural challenges that influence how these applicants present themselves. There's historical discrimination, there's difficulty navigating that red tape, there's understanding what their motivation for even applying for the job is. A lot of these new immigrants, they're not applying to advance their career, they're applying to support their family and send their kids to school. That's really their priority and motivation. A lot of them are untrustful. There's a difference also between first and next generation. You also have to remember there's a digital inequity in this community. In all of these unrepresented communities, not everyone has availability to Wi-Fi and the internet. I always tell everyone that an understanding of cultural competency is more than just language and translation. It's really understanding the history of that culture. So the strategies that I consider as good strategies for empathy and understanding would be, of course, respect and patience. You expect the applicant to respect and be patient with you. It should go vice versa. Understanding levels of acculturation, and I don't mean assimilation. A new immigrant who is new to this country has to go through levels of acculturation. And if they are brand new, then it would be more difficult than somebody who has been here for 5 generations. Okay. Avoid patronizing speech and condescending manner. And I always say, please do your homework. If you know that your applicant is coming from an underrepresented community, check your cultural manners, do your homework, find out what works and what is rude and what is positive in that community. That's what I have. I want to thank everybody for coming today, and I will pass it off to our next speaker.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Fran, for providing all that information. Our next panelist this afternoon is going to be Janine and Vanderberg. She is the director for Changing the Narrative. The floor is yours, Janine.
Great, thanks so much. And thanks everybody for being here. So at Changing the Narrative, we believe that keeping experienced talent in the workforce is good, not only for older workers ourselves, but also for the community, the economy, and more specifically for your business. Trey, I was thinking about the last time I was in Sterling before the pandemic, and I was with you all with the Workforce Development Center, with the Chamber of Commerce, with the community college. And I remember one particular meeting that we had with some of the older residents of Logan County. And I asked at the beginning, I think there were 35 people in the room. And I asked at the beginning, how many of you are currently working? And not one hand went up. And then I asked, how many of you would like to work part-time, full-time? And every single hand in the room went up. So when we think about the fact that across the United States, and certainly in Colorado, we have this incredible talent shortage across the US, 11 million, we can't overlook the older workers that live in our community. And often what gets in the way are myths and stereotypes that we have. Because of our time, I'm not going to go into them right now, but if anybody wants to ask a question about myths or stereotypes that they believe are out there, older workers, I'm happy to share with you not only stories, but research about why many of those myths and stereotypes aren't true. So let's say that you are here because you say, I need to fill the talent pipeline. And as someone who's been a longtime business owner, I know what it is to wear the many hats and what happens when one hat walks out the door and you don't have someone to replace it. And so we know that during the pandemic, one of the things that happened, there's been this mythology all of a sudden that older people don't want to work. And that is factually incorrect. What the research actually shows is that people literally in their 50s and 60s were pushed out during the pandemic, kept trying to work, but because of age discrimination, or maybe people believing those myths and stereotypes, haven't been able to get a job. So what I know from who I talk to every day is that older people very much want to work. So how can we go ahead as employers and attract them? We can use some hiring strategies that are considered, quote, age inclusive is the term we're going to use. And one of them is to consider the images and language that you might have in your job announcements on your website, on your recruiting. What do I mean by that? If a job announcement says, I'm looking for a recent college graduate who is energetic and can lift 50 pounds and who is a digital native, there was a study that was just published a few months ago that people are like, okay, well, you know, if they say digital native, obviously beyond a certain age, we can't be a digital native. We can certainly be a digital learner, but those are things that become code words to experienced workers that you're not open to older workers. We can remove, second thing we can do, we can remove age identifiers from our application. So a study by Resume Builder of 800 hiring managers across the US found that 38% of hiring managers admitted to screening applications with age bias, and 44% of them said older applicants should not put their graduation dates on their resumes or applications. which is fine and well, but when you're obliged to, because you're using a system that prompts you to put your high school graduation date on, that kind of pushes older people away. And we know that it is illegal to ask someone their age, but it's not illegal to ask us our high school graduation date. And that's one of the things that Changing the Narrative is working on with the coalitional partners to remove the ability to ask for high school graduation dates. We can train our hiring managers, and if that's you, it's getting education yourself on what the business case for older workers is. And it's really strong so that people are open to the benefits that older workers can bring to your business. But we can also train them on things like myths and stereotypes, refuting myths and stereotypes, and how not to use practices that push away older workers. We can use skill-based assessments. So I'll share briefly a story of a friend of mine who had been a vice president of marketing for a really large home builder company, and that had some troubles during the recession. And so she was looking for a new marketing job that required social media skills. The hiring manager, she was one of 2 finalists, the hiring manager literally told her, you know what, I think you're older, so you probably don't have the social media chops. Now, if somebody instead had either used skill-based or simply looked up her social media profiles, they would have discovered that she's a social media rock star. But that's an example of, we make assumptions about what people can do based on their age. And finally, one of the things that I might encourage you to explore is encourage you to become certified as age friendly. There's a process. I've got a link in the handout that will be distributed, but it's a way of basically showing to older workers that, you know what, we really are open to workers of all ages. And that's important because we know that intergenerational teams actually are the most creative, the most have better problem solving, are more productive, and have more profitable. There's tons of research on that. So if you have older workers, the other thing that you can do is whatever retention strategies you're using overall. I was doing a workshop for 300 hiring managers at Mile High Stadium back in May, and somebody said, I get this hiring older workers thing, but we already have all these initiatives about retention. What would we do? And I asked, well, what are some of your retention strategies? Well, we allow flexible schedules. We allow a certain degree of autonomy. You can work remotely. We have a hybrid office. All of those things that are appealing to younger workers are also appealing to older workers. And I think all of us post-pandemic are feeling some of those. The way that work was designed before probably doesn't work now. So those are examples of kind of things, the retention strategies that you're using anyway. You can encourage reciprocal mentoring. One of the things a study showed is over 3/4 of older adults want to mentor, older 3/4 of younger adults want to be mentored, and people want to mentor each other as well. So if we can build that into our work environment, you'll be creating a great environment that both attracts and retains older workers. And I hope to get some questions later. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Janine, for providing that perspective. Our next speaker this afternoon is going to be gentleman next to me, John Scarborough, the president of Plating Electric.
I'll dive in.
Yeah, great. Thanks, John.
Thank you for the introduction. Nice to be here in Sterling. This is such a beautiful place to be, and glad I made the trip up from Denver. 8,500 people leave Colorado prisons every year. 8,500 people every year. Now, I'd like to think, I'm sure just like you, that 100% of these people leave the prison with absolutely the purest intentions. Unfortunately, that isn't always the case. As a matter of fact, recidivism, which is the relapse rate of formerly incarcerated people in the US, is the highest in the world. And that average across the US is about 45%. Here in Colorado, it's above average at 50%. So roughly, let's call it half, 50% within the first 1 to 3 years, re-enter the prison system. Pretty interesting stats. From my experience, though, we have had a lot of success in hiring formerly incarcerated individuals. my experience has shown me, by the way, a number of things. This is what I wanted to talk about today. As far as what types of jobs that might be a good fit for, what types of jobs it wouldn't be a good fit for, and how do you identify the 50% of those people who are really actually on the right road, on that pathway. The pathway from prison to employment, or prison back into being an active, positive member of our communities is definitely the key question. And it's not easily solved. Good news is across Colorado, there are a number of great nonprofit organizations that you can work with to help identify those individuals that appear to be on the right path. Specifically at Canadian Electric, we're a commercial electrical contractor. So we're in the trades. We work with a number of different nonprofit organizations, but what we have seen is that, you know, within the trades or manufacturing, you can find these types of people who are really on that right pathway, who actually want to be a part of it. The organizations that we work with specifically are second chance centers. Second chance centers, there are a number of them across the state. And this is an organization that really identifies those people and puts them on this right path. Now, let's talk about some of the things that we've learned along the way. Number one, I would say the interview process is just like any other interview process. But you really want to start digging into this kind of, you know, what is their level of commitment to themselves? Do they, you know, do they see themselves going back into prison? And many of them do. This is, you know, the only path that they've ever known, unfortunately. But you'll also find those people that, particularly for nonviolent crimes, they've made a few mistakes along the way. These are people that are absolutely worthy of a second chance, hence the name of these organizations. Looking at some of these folks, though, I would say the first thing to be on the lookout for is definitely someone that has made a commitment to themselves to get onto this right path. The second takeaway that I've learned over the years is you really want to make sure that these individuals have infrastructure and a support system around them. That could be not only their own family and friends, which I would emphasize family, but also second chance centers, for example. We were talking about mentoring earlier. Second chance centers have incredible mentoring programs for these individuals that help them and keep them on this right pathway and guide them, and also provide that level of support for anything that they might need. For example, in the trades that I work in, many of the second chance centers provide these workers boots or tools, because for that new tradesman, there could be, you know, $150 pair of boots, could be $500 worth of tools, and the second chance centers very oftentimes have grants or have access to funding that will actually fund these types of resources for the individual. The third thing I wanted to mention is, in addition to having a commitment to themselves, you also want to be looking for a commitment, finding that individual has a commitment to their futures. As I said before, some of them, they kind of, you know, they already sort of know they might be re-entering the system because it's what they know the most. But that isn't always the case. So make sure that as you're interviewing for these folks, be on the lookout for the signals, the signs, the things that people are going to say, that they really see themselves being a part of an opportunity, being a part of their company, looking to learn, looking to grow, looking to be a part of something else. You know, and being a part of a company, being, you know, an active part of the company itself. In my experience, we've had several second chance individuals as a part of the trades. They've all been great. We've had, you know, we've had a couple little slip ups, but very minor, and I would tell you, it's nothing that I wouldn't see in a non-incarcerated former, justice involved individual. So, frankly, from what I've seen, as long as you put them in the right position, the right opportunity, and the right level of communications, then these folks can absolutely be a vital and active and positive part of the community as well as your business. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, John. Next, to share their perspective, we're gonna hear from Josh Gibbs, Business and Virtual Services Regional Lead for the Eastern Region for CDLE. It's your turn, Josh. Go for it.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Gibbs. It's just mentioned, I'm with the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment with the Workforce Centers. So the Workforce Centers are a free, no-cost agency available to you. We serve both job seekers and businesses. There's a lot of good things, exciting things happening in the state right now that I wanted to touch on regarding the recruiting and supporting workers as well as businesses. But just to back up a little bit, looking at the Workforce Center, we do offer a job board and job posting through the state. It is a no-cost option to post your job with us, and we can definitely support you with that and make sure that you have that free posting available in the community. We also offer a number of other services, but Janine Vanderberg just talked about the job description as a great opportunity to make sure that you are being inclusive and not showing that bias of a specific job or specific individual that you're looking for. And so that's something we can work on as well. We can help you unpack that, look at skills-based hiring, make sure that language is really clear and showing what you want to look for in a potential individual, potential worker, and then help you with that process. We also can support working with the recruiting. Like today, for example, we have a job fair going on in Fort Oregon. So another great free resource available to you. Some of the other things going on with the state right now, CDLE has an apprenticeship office that was just stood up. So if you're interested in working or setting up an apprenticeship, we have apprenticeship consultants that are on staff ready to help you with that process. It's a really cool process out there. It's not something new. We've been doing it, as a nation since the nation was born practically, right? So if you're interested in the apprenticeship process, that's something we can assist with as well. We also have efforts around job quality. So that retention piece is something that the state is working on. There's some efforts around that. So if you're interested in that as well, we can definitely connect you with a resource with that. There is some efforts out there. We also have an Office of New Americans that is out there to help support that process as well when it comes to supporting the underrepresented populations. So there's a lot of great resources available with the state. That's why I'm here today to talk a little bit about those and hopefully answer any questions that you have around the workforce centers for the state.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Josh, for sharing. And then we are going to move on to Lloyd M. Lewis, the president and CEO of our thrift stores. They're joining us from Zoom. Go ahead and share with us, Lloyd, when you're ready.
Sure, thanks for the introduction. So I've been with our thrift stores now 17 years. I'm proud that we've added 1,200 jobs during my tenure. We now have nearly 2,000 employees at my company, and we span the state of Fort Collins to Pueblo and on the western slope, and we'll be hitting the eastern slope hopefully next. I think the best way to recruit and retain employees for an inclusive company is to be one. So I'm proud that we are a great second and third and fourth chance employer. We employ refugees, immigrants, people of color, people re-entering the workforce from prison, people from rehab and recovery homeless. We're very proud of that. We have and to do that, we have a very simplified employment app. We have flexible hours and schedules. We do on-the-job training. Most of our employees learn their skills in our companies. So there's a movement away from minimal education requirements in companies to skills-based hiring. We take it a step further. We develop the skills in our company. In our company, promotion depends on performance. And it's great if you have a great mission. And every company has a great mission. Every company is providing living for the families who they employ and their ability to support their families and make products and services. In our case, we also have a primary mission of supporting people with developmental disabilities. We support rescue missions and shelters and in our communities, and every company can do that. Every company can support their community to support nonprofits. We are one of the largest employers of people with intellectual disabilities in this state. I've hired 400 wonderful employees with intellectual disabilities. You know, there are 6 million people with intellectual disabilities in this country, and they have the highest rate of unemployment in the country. It's like 80%. We've got 11 million open jobs, and we've got tens of millions of people with all disabilities. And employers can fill their employment needs with this community. All it takes is, being understanding and making accommodations. And our company has had 16 of 17 record years. They're not just a cost center. They are extremely helpful to our company and to all companies in which they work. They love to contribute. They have an extremely low rate of turnover. They're typically very positive in the workforce, and I find that they have a very positive impact on morale. And when you positively impact morale, you impact productivity. And then higher productivity creates higher revenue, which creates higher earnings. We're now doing over $100 million in revenue every year versus 20 or 30 when I started. And I attribute half of that to employment of people with intellectual disabilities. As employers, we don't have to do it the way our parents and our grandparents did. We can make radical changes in how we employ people and who we employ. Don't be afraid of radical ideas. Don't be afraid of challenging the status quo. Don't be afraid of disrupting the norm. We can all make a tremendous difference in our communities and in the employees of employ.
Thanks so much for sharing. I appreciate everyone. There's obviously some common themes about adaptability, but also just being inclusive from really different perspectives. So appreciate everyone who provided some wisdom today. We will go ahead and open it up for questions. I don't know if there's any questions in person. Deborah, there might be any questions coming in through the chat, but it is now kind of a Q&A period for our panelists. Go for it.
Just a request for people to really speak up if you're answering.
Yep. So again, just as a reminder to please speak up for our interpreter if you are asking a question in person. Go for it, Trey.
John, you're talking about with justice involved individuals and finding the right fit within the company and the right role for them. Do you do any kind of assessments of those individuals, personality assessments or anything like that to help make sure that they're in that right role that they're going to excel in, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just for the benefit of the Zoom world, Trey was asking, are there such things as assessment tests when we're hiring these justice involved individuals? We don't do that ourselves as a part of our hiring process, but the second chance centers very typically do. So we work with, I had used the word mentors before, just as there are mentors among the second chance participants, there are in fact counselors or mentors that we work with directly too. So it's been interesting, they have such a familiarity with these folks, and you know, they can very easily identify the ones that meet the criteria that we've set forth. As I had mentioned, do they have a support system? Do they have infrastructure at home? Do they have a place to live? You know, do they have an alarm clock? Will they show up on time? You know, these are sort of some basic things that you want to just check off. And most definitely the Second Chance Centers, their objective is just like ours, which is to make sure that we've identified a very successful employee that's going to be a part of the company, that's going to grow and have retention and tenure and everything else. So, yeah, short answer is we don't do that ourselves, but we rely on the counselors and the support system of Second Chance to help us with that.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions? Anything from online? Yes.
I could follow on with that from Trey, so tell me, I can speak way too loud.
Very fine, please speak up.
So Deborah, tell me.
Introduce yourself as well.
I'd like to follow on with the local situation related to, I'm the business consultant for the East Colorado Small Business Development Center here. And as Trey knows, I have some clients who have been formerly incarcerated through the Sterling Correctional Facility. And they do land here since we're the largest, you know, we're the largest community that has that size of a facility. And I want to make two quick points and just to support your point about this. I also have clients that are business owners and have hired guys from the correctional facility. And I want us to say that the important side has been the skills-based hiring. So speaking to Janine's point, when I have worked with people who are hiring individuals through the SBDC, we are one of the centers using that talent skillful approach, as I believe the Sterling Correctional, the Sterling Workforce Center is doing. So we're also using, you know, help to create job descriptions. We hand them off to the Workforce Center. And then what I'm saying is, again, as there's the opportunity with some of the guys saying, hey, I'd like to have these positions, working with the parolee release program, working with the various halfway houses that are out here. And that's worked pretty well. But the challenge is, again, when I'm consulting one-on-one with business owners, speak directly to what John just said. You know, you need to kind of do the commitment, you need to ensure they're coming to work on time. But I want to illustrate something with somebody that started out, literally was in this prison, in this jail. And Trey, you may know the person, but I'm not going to identify them. They were in this jail about 30 whatever years ago and did serve hard time and came back out into the community X amount of years ago with not a whole lot of skills. Created a small business, worked with me to get that going, but met somebody else in the process, became an employee of that business. And I can tell you today that particular person now has a majority ownership of a local business and can serve as a mentor because of the entire process they went through with the resources in our community. So I just want to say thank you guys for somebody that's been involved in that. And I've done some teaching directly at the facility and I understand the business program. So I understand how they can fit into that and not want to break away from that because that's been their life for an awful long time before they come out.
Absolutely. I love that success story. I think that's great. To piggyback off of that, we have a guy that's working for us right now. He had been incarcerated for 28 years. It was drug related, it was non-violent, made a couple bad decisions, 28 years, and he was, you know, he served his time. When he came out though, he had his family still there, amazingly enough, to be his support system. And he was trying to figure out what to do next. In talking to him and working with him, as I have, you know, he watched his dad as a construction worker. So he was like, well, I want to get into the trades too. And so he chose electrical. One of the challenges, I just bring this up as far as the skills that we're referring to, is that in electrical, there is some math involved. And so there's schooling that we send every electrician through. It usually takes anywhere from 2 to 4 years. He just started his schooling this fall semester, so really like 6 weeks ago. And unfortunately, he's not been able to keep up with the math. And I mean, this isn't algebra. It's fairly basic multiplication, addition kind of stuff. You have to understand the formulas. There's some, there's some math involved, but it's not over the top. But this was an interesting learning for us that he had forgotten so much math. He hadn't used math like that before over the last 28 years. I bring this up though because 2 things. One, Second Chance has stepped in, has provided tutoring support for him for the next year to bring him up to speed, so that when he restarts again this time next year or next fall, he'll be in a much, much better position to be able to tackle that kind of math. And then secondly, there are a lot of other trades that don't necessarily require the level of math that's in electric. Carpentry, I mean, pretty much any trade's going to have some math, of course, but you can't necessarily bluff your way through it in electrical per se, but there are plenty of other trades that, with the right tape measure, you can pretty much get through it. But, look, these guys, they deserve a second chance. And there's lots of success stories of people just like you're saying that have done incredible things. So it's great.
Yeah.
Sure.
Are there similar resources to access in the Denver metro area through the workforce center?
Yeah, so just the question again, resources to access across the state and specifically in Denver. So the Colorado workforce system is available across the state. There is the Denver Workforce Center is specifically available as well. The Colorado Department of Labor and Employment does serve the state as entirely. So everything I mentioned is available across the state. It would just be the means of finding the right office specifically for like the workforce center, but like the Office of Apprenticeship or the Office of New Americans, there's just that single point of contact that I will share with Deborah at the end of this event, and it will be in a follow-up email available to you.
Do you have another question for that one?
Yes, this one's for, do you want me to read it?
Sure.
This one's for Janine and Lloyd. For those over 50 or individuals with disabilities, often part-time work is desired. This desire for part-time jobs seems to be overlooked in the effort to get folks into quality jobs, where full-time jobs with benefits is the big push. What, if anything, are you hearing at the state or national level about redefining quality jobs to include part-time work? And are there any quality job standards that you've seen that include part-time work? So probably good for Josh too.
I can kick that off and turn it over to Janine, but at our company, when part-time work is an accommodation or a preference of someone who is older or has a disability, to make sure that happens. I've just joined the advisory council for DVR, and that's a point I'll be emphasizing in our discussions as we work through various disability issues. I have a lot of employees with disabilities. I have a number of employees who are older. We make sure that we accommodate them when they have needs that we need to address.
Thanks, Lloyd. Did anyone else want to speak on that last question?
So I'll just say that for many older people, and when you think about it, older people, we're talking a really long lifespan, right? Age 50 and up. What you might want at age 50 if you've been pushed out and trying to get back in the workplace is more likely to be full-time work, benefits, and that kind of thing. As you get older, there's a big phenomena now called unretirement, where maybe people retired for a while and then said, whoa, whether it's needing meaning and purpose, mental acuity, whatever it is, or money. And so part-time work is, if if what older people are looking for is part-time work becomes a quality job. So I think the definitions that we have about prime working age and what constitutes a quality job are things that were kind of defined when we didn't have the longevity that we have. People are living longer and healthier lives for the most part. A baby born today has a 50-50 chance of living to be 100. So the idea of we're just going to work full time for this period of time, prime working age, and then stop is really being redefined. So there are a lot of people working on this issue, but it's kind of emerging. And so I think the bottom line answer to the question, I don't think that there is one definition of a quality part-time job, but part of it is just looking about who, wants to enter your workforce and what can you offer for people who are age 65 and over. Health benefits people are getting Medicare. Health benefits aren't going to be as big a thing. They may want simply the engagement, the opportunity to mentor, etc. So there's a lot of definition within that.
I would agree with you, Janine, with that subjectivity of the job quality piece, because for me as an individual, single adult, I'm not going to be worried about health, the childcare, that's someone else my age that has young kids. So, so that there is a subjectivity piece to that job quality. So it's really what that individual needs and wants at that time in their life. So to the job quality part of that question, I think it's very much an individual question to that answer. And then also, Lloyd had mentioned Vocational Rehab. That is another state agency that is available for individuals with disabilities. So I can include that information. That will be included in a follow-up email as well. So Vocational Rehab is another state agency available for individuals with disabilities trying to go back to work.
Great. Are there any other questions in person or via Zoom?
So I actually have a question and I guess this is all of the other panelists and especially I think anybody in workforce development. So I was on another panel a few weeks ago, and there was someone from Grayston Bakery who, has made a whole business model out of hiring underrepresented populations, and a really interesting idea that they put on the table that I guess some other companies are starting, and I'm wondering if anyone is seeing this in Colorado, is what they call open hiring. And this is for entry-level jobs, but basically when someone has an opening, you get on a waiting list. If you want to work in this entry-level job in this company, you just put on a waiting list when the job opening comes up, as opposed to, resume applications, screening test, all the things. There's just an interview with the person who's doing the hiring. And it's basically kind of first come, first serve. And what they've said, the research, and I wish I could remember his name offhand, the research that he presented said that they had incredible retention. And so I'm wondering if anyone else that we know of is doing that in Colorado, and what your thoughts about that are.
We more or less do that in practice, Janine. And, for us, we're developing skills on the job.
Yeah.
And, I agree with that approach, and we've been very successful with our hiring and our company. So I admire what they're doing. And I think more people would find success also if they emulate that model.
Yeah.
Janine, I'm really glad you brought this up because I was talking to a business about this yesterday, and I think going back to even the job description again, we're so focused on filling that role, and we're almost like setting up a little box that we want to put somebody in to put them aside and make sure they do their job right. But I think we have to, knock down the box, knock down the walls, and say, where are my workers? How can I help these people be successful in their lives? Because so many applications, I deal with applications every day, you see them click and they have to apply for a certain job, right? So and how many times have you heard on the recruiting side, oh, this person isn't eligible, or the applicant tracking system knocks them out, and then they're one and done, right? There's not any help for that. So So kind of flipping the tables a little bit and saying, you know, who are my workers out there who are interested? And then, you know, where can I support them, or where can they be best fit in my business? And then maybe looking at that that way. I think that's a really cool mindset and something I'd love to see more of.
We have another question from online. What are your tips for managing a technology gap? One thing I've noticed with employers looking to expand their hiring pools is that someone who's been incarcerated or who hasn't had access to reliable internet is sometimes missing what employers consider basic computer skills. How can you build in accommodations for that?
I'll jump in real quick. I lost my train of thought earlier. We were talking about the math challenge that this one individual had. Going back to Trey's question. So when working with the Second Chance group, they've now included a math part of their assessment process. That was my circling back around to you, Con. But technology is sort of the same challenge, you know. What I have found though, that these things are universal, like it or not. And thankfully, you know, for what we do, and dare I say, I think I can say this comfortably for pretty much everything in manufacturing, an employee in manufacturing or an employee in trades, everything's mobile. Like, you know, and really, if they can, you know, manage a text, it's pretty much the extent of the technology that's required. But it has been interesting to me. Every once in a while, I'll get an email from the same individual that I've been referring to, and the entire email is in the subject line. The entire, like, you know, 3 paragraphs are in the subject line. So there's some basic tech training that absolutely has to go on. And again, you know, whenever I have a similar conversation with the Second Chance folks, it's you know, they're like, yep, absolutely, we need to include that. So they're super flexible and accommodating. And of course, you know, it kind of depends on the individual too, and their age. This particular individual is 50 plus. So, you know, he's got a number of different challenges going on here. You know, what I will say for those individuals that are looking for the growth opportunity, they know they don't want to be left behind. So they're all trying really hard and they're ready to learn. They just need the chance. It's really what I've seen.
All right, I know we have about 4 minutes left. Are there any other questions that we'd like to cover?
So I just want to jump in on the tech issue and on behalf of older people. So one of the big stereotypes out there is that as we get older, we're digitally incompetent, and a number of things have now shown that that is a total myth. So kind of one, and we can't make assumptions about older people in technology. But the other thing is, and Josh, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the kind of training that workforce development centers can offer, because I've done jointly a number of programs with different workforce development centers, and the opportunity for someone who hasn't had the opportunity to maybe get tech skills is a lot of workforce development centers offer. A lot of local libraries in Colorado, we have kind of Senior Planet. I mean, there are no number of free opportunities, and there are also opportunities for employers to get access through the Workforce Development Center to get their employees, you know, upskilled. So I think the first thing is we don't want to make assumptions that certain groups either won't have the skills or don't want to learn. And the recent AARP data showed that older workers, like 2/3 of older workers, said they wish that their employers would provide them with some additional training, but because of a myth and stereotype that we are not going to stay around as we're older, people tend to give the training opportunities to younger people. And on average, older workers have 4 times the tenure of younger workers. So, you know, part of it is up to all of us to make sure that we understand what's out there, don't make assumptions. And I am a cheerleader for Colorado's workforce development system. I think y'all are doing amazing work. So Josh, I don't know if you can add anything to what workforce centers can do in that regard, but I think it's important.
Yeah, thanks, Janine. There are different projects going on across the state, so I would just recommend inquiring with your local workforce center. We do have some ideas working for Northeast Colorado in the works. And then also, yeah, just ask, because we're also connected to the community. So there's just different nonprofits out there, different groups that are willing to support some of these underrepresented populations. And so we may not have the exact training support for you, but we may be able to connect you with somebody that does. So so definitely, I would definitely inquire, and we can definitely help you and support that.
Great. I know that Deborah is putting our survey in the chat right now. It is extremely important for our first to receive feedback to continue the work that we're doing. So in person, there are surveys in your folders amongst other resources. And again, I know that Deborah's putting the link to the English and Spanish survey in the chat. We will be sending out an email with a resource folder and a ton of the things that we covered today, as well as our slide deck, which has the names of our amazing panelists today. Deborah, did you have anything to add? And then want to give a round of applause for everyone that joined on our panel today. I think it was a wealth of knowledge for everyone. And again, for our host sponsor, the Annex, so a round of applause at home, Spirit Fingers. But we, again, really appreciate everyone joining. Again, it's been amazing doing our Lunch and Learn series. Our next one is going to be on October 12th. And so we'd love to see you then. Shameless plug, GBC celebrating our 5th anniversary as well. So if you want to learn more about what we do in the community, we are holding an in-person event on October 20th in Greenfield, 5 years in. So it's been an incredible journey. So thanks again to everyone, and we'll see you next time.